to the vertebrae for which they're named, right? So you can see that here, C6 vertebral body is right here, and the C6 spinal nerve in red is exiting above that vertebral body, okay? Because we have an extra spinal nerve, that C8 spinal nerve, it exits under C7, kind of like it would exit above C8, but there is no C8 vertebrae, right? So the next vertebrae is T1. Well, now because there's a C8 spinal nerve, everything starts to exit below their vertebral body after that, okay? So T1 and everything else exit inferior to their vertebrae. Make sense? Cool. So we can see that here, basically C1 is exiting above the C1 vertebrae between the base of the skull and its vertebrae, and it carries that way until we get down to C8. It exits above T1 and below C7. So now everything gets shifted down. So now T1 exits under the T1 vertebrae. Same thing with T2 and T3. Does it bother anybody that I'm standing in front of the projector? Okay. Because I can use the mouse. Okay, so what happens to our ventral rami after the spinal nerve, so that structure going anteriorly, right? It's a mixed nerve, motor, and sensory. Most of our ventral rami are going to merge together in a plexus. We're going to see that today with the brachial plexus, but we have multiple plexuses in the body. We have a cervical plexus, we have a lumbar plexus, and we have a sacral plexus. You guys are going to learn to love the lumbosacral plexus next year. It's everybody's least favorite block. But all of the extra ventral rami are forming a plexus. They're coming together and then splitting apart to mix our spinal nerves. Except for our thoracic nerves, okay? Our thoracic ventral rami, our T1 will contribute to the brachial plexus, and T12 will contribute to the lumbar plexus, but basically T1 to T12 are also going to give off their own nerve. They're not going to merge with anything else, and they're going to become the intercostal nerves. So everything traveling under our rib, right, in that costal groove of the rib, those are our intercostal nerves, and they're coming from our T1 to T12 ventral rami, okay? Does that make sense? So everything, all the other ventral rami are going to come together and form a plexus and go to the limbs, like the upper limb and the lower limb, but our thoracic are just going to follow our ribs and basically innervate the space in between each rib that's filled with muscle. Okay, and we can kind of see that here. So like our cervical plexus and our brachial plexus are here, and you can kind of see all of these structures coming together and then splitting apart. But here, when we get to T1 all the way down to T12, you have a nerve traveling under each rib, and we have 12 ribs, so we have 12 intercostal nerves all coming from our thoracic spinal nerves, okay? And they're just going to innervate all of our intercostal muscles and do sensory to that region as well. Okay, so this is our brachial plexus. Our brachial plexus, if you know the brachial plexus, you will know this entire unit. If you can, so this is what I'm talking about, draw it out. If you can draw this out in an easier form and list the arteries that each nerve runs with and the muscles that it innervates, you have everything you need to know on your practical except for like the back. Everything. I'm telling you. Please draw it, color coordinate it, write it out. It's going to make your life a whole lot easier. Okay? So basically, we have this brachial plexus, and we break it up into roots, trunks, divisions, cords, and branches. Okay? So people say risk takers don't cautiously behave, to kind of remember like the order in which the roots, trunks, divisions, cords, and branches go. I, like Randy Travis, drinks cold beer beverages. I think that's easier to remember. So our roots are formed from, like, technically they're rami. Technically they're not roots, okay? But people, like every textbook calls it a root. So from our like nerves, C5, C6, C7, C8, and T1 are all contributing to this brachial plexus. So these are the roots. We have trunks. We have a superior, middle, and inferior trunk, okay? We have division. So we have a posterior division that's gonna go back and an anterior division that's gonna go more anteriorly, right, forward. And then we have a cord. So we have our lateral cord, our medial cord, or posterior cord, sorry, and then the medial cord is down here. So our lateral and medial cords are coming from our anterior division, and our posterior cord is coming from our posterior division. Okay, and then we have our terminal branches, and we have 5 terminal branches off of the brachial plexus. And they are actually what you're gonna see in the upper limb. So that median nerve, ulnar nerve, our radial nerve, those are our branches of the brachial plexus. So you need to know all of this, but you're gonna see this. That's it, okay? You'll eventually get to see this in your like future coursework, but for this course, you'll probably only see just a little piece of it. So we can see our brachial plexus is formed from the ventral rami of C5 to T1. I don't know why people call it roots. And our brachial plexus, it basically travels under the clavicle, okay, anterior, like in between some of our neck muscles. So it's traveling like in between our anterior and our middle scalenes, and you guys don't know what those are, but I'm just gonna start talking to you guys as if like you're med students, because you're about to be med students, and there's no point in me leaving out information that could help you. So it travels between our muscles in our neck, our anterior and our middle scalenes, and it's gonna go under this clavicle and pop out into the upper limb, okay? It's gonna surround this artery called the axillary artery, which becomes the brachial artery eventually, so it's the brachial plexus. So when you guys go home and you're gonna draw the brachial plexus, this is kind of how you should draw it. This is how I draw it, and this is how everybody else draws it. If you find a YouTube video that's easier for you to follow along with, go for it, as long as the information is reflective of what's in this lecture, okay? So if you guys have a blank sheet of paper, I would take it out and draw it, because I think it's kind of confusing when you're like at home on your own and doing it. It's easier if like you have questions about it right now, just ask them, okay? So essentially, you have your roots, okay? And you have, we'll draw it like this, and then I'll tell you guys how I draw it. Okay, so you have 3 Ys, essentially. So you have this Y and this Y facing the same, and then a flipped Y right in the middle, okay? You guys wanna draw your 3 Ys. So we have our roots here, okay? These are our Randy roots, Travis, our trunks, and then we're gonna draw our divisions in a second. Okay. Then you draw, at the very end, you draw your M. Okay, attached to your Ys. So you have 3 Ys, one is flipped, and then an M at the very end. And then you draw an X right in between our first 2 Ys. With a slash in between our second 2 Ys. So this is like the basic layout of our brachial plexus.
Yeah. I have a question. Sorry, I missed some of it. So first you draw 3 Ys, one's inverted, then an M.
Then an M at the very end.
And then what was after the M? The X?
X, right in between the first 2 Ys.
Okay.
And then a backslash between our second 2 Ys. Okay, so if you cut it up into different pieces, you have your roots, your trunks, your divisions, your cords, and then your branches. Okay. Randy Travis drinks cold beer. You have to like use your imagination to kind of visualize that this structure, and this structure are diving into the page. And these structures, this one and this one, as well as this one, are coming out of the page.
Can you say that one more time?
Yeah, so these three structures are going into the page, and everything else is coming out of the page. So you have a posterior division and an anterior division. And that's where your artery is traveling, in between the two, okay?
You said your artery is traveling in between
The divisions, yeah, it's making them anterior and posterior. It's also making these like, it'll also make like your lateral and medial, it's talking about in relation to the artery that's traveling in the middle, okay? So if we label our roots, we have C5, C6, C7, C8, and T1. So the vertebrae are C5, C6, C7, and T1 is right here. So the vertebral bodies, and then our spinal nerves are the actual roots. Our trunks, we have our upper, middle, and lower. So very easy, exactly how it's shown, right? Our upper, our middle, and our lower trunks. So then we get into our divisions, and this is where you have to imagine it diving into the page or coming out of the page, because we have three posterior divisions. This one, and this one going in, like back into the page. And then we have three anterior divisions. Okay, so this one kind of just stays anterior the whole way. This bottom line. And this top line as well. We have contributions from this middle trunk also contributing to this anterior division. Our cords, yeah.
So the way that we should look at this is, from like C5, T is anterior, C6, the first green line that's going down is going posterior.
No, so C5 and 6 are coming together to form the upper trunk, okay? And then what happens here is parts of this are going to go posterior, so like parts of C5 and 6, like nerves, because this root contains a bunch of axons, okay? And some axons are gonna go posterior, some axons are gonna go anterior. So they've mixed now, we're in C5, C6, right? Some of those axons are gonna remain anterior, and some of them are gonna split and go posterior to join with this posterior division. Does that make sense? Yeah, so that's another thing to keep in mind. Nerves are a bunch of little hairs in one big ponytail, okay? You can't really see the little hairs, but they carry different information. They're going to different places. It's not like one structure. It's like thousands of structures in one thing that we see with our naked eye, okay? Yeah.
For C7,
Yeah.
it's originally P.
Yeah, so
posterior.
C7, well, so at this point, we're not anterior or posterior, we're all in the same plane, okay? But once we get to the divisions, that's when we become anterior, posterior to the artery. This is when the artery has joined into the plexus. And I'll show you a relationship once we finish this drawing, and it'll make it easier. Okay, so we have our posterior divisions and our anterior divisions. We're there, right? Now we have cords. So because these are coming out of the page and this is going into the page, imagine an artery traveling on top of this, okay? So we have a nerve lateral to the artery that makes our lateral cord, and we have a nerve medial to the artery making our medial cord. We also have a nerve running behind the artery making our posterior cord, okay? And that's what you guys are gonna see in the arm when you look at the axillary artery. You're gonna see the cords and then you're gonna kind of see this M on top of the artery that makes our terminal branches, okay? Then we have our terminal branches, and we have a couple of terminal branches. So we have our musculocutaneous nerve coming from our lateral cord, the top of the M. We have, if we just stick to the anterior branches, we have musculocutaneous, median, and ulnar, okay? Off of our posterior cord, we have the axillary nerve and the radial nerve. So, in the upper limb, okay, like from here down, you see ulnar, radial, medial, or median, sorry, and musculocutaneous. You'll see it up here, okay? All of those are traveling a really long distance, right? Our axillary nerve comes off of our posterior cord, but it's actually gonna innervate the deltoid and another muscle in the shoulder. So it kind of ends. We don't really see it traveling down, okay? It's one of the smaller terminal branches off of our brachial plexus. So when we talk about cord levels of these nerves, you're gonna have to know the cord levels of these nerves. Keep in mind that everything travels forward, okay? Nothing goes backward. So when you're assigning cord levels, okay, so follow, like if we follow musculocutaneous and you wanna go back from musculocutaneous to assign cord levels, you can't go back and then forward and then back and then down this way, okay? You have to follow it straight back from where it's coming from, because everything's traveling straight forward. Does that make sense? So if we follow musculocutaneous back, we go back. This is formed from here and here, okay? We go back, so this is formed from here and here. So musculocutaneous should have C5, C6, and C7 contributions. That's not like that for every single nerve, but for most of the nerves it is. So C5, C6, and C7 give rise to musculocutaneous. Median, if we do the same thing, we go back, okay, back. But this was formed from here, right? So you have this, these, and this. So all of them contribute to the median nerve. Ulnar, only remember it's that straight shot, so only coming from C8 and T1. Okay. Radial also comes from all of the cord levels because we have these, this, and this contributing to the posterior division. And then radial kind of stays and goes, C5 to T1 contribute to radial. The weird one in this mix is axillary, okay? And C5 and 6 give rise to axillary. None of the other like nerves contribute to axillary. I don't know why. That's a question that I can't answer. But those nerves are, and if you think about where axillary is contributing to and like the dermatome map that you guys have kind of seen, that dermatome map, C5 and 6 are in that region and no other nerves are in that region, so. Okay, does that make sense? We're gonna draw it again. I'm gonna draw it with you, but just as you go. So those are the vertebrae. So drawing the brachial plexus, you have your roots, your trunks, your divisions, your branches, okay? They left out cords. Good. Okay. So your cords are gonna be right before your branches. Okay, and I think, yeah, I don't really know what's going on here. Just don't forget about the cords. So we can kind of see here. So you have, this is your artery right here. I'm gonna use the mouse because I think it's just easier. Okay, so this is the artery. This is the brachial plexus. So here we're like really high up and they've removed a portion of the clavicle for you guys to be able to see this image. So we have our roots, right? Okay, our M, so this is the musculocutaneous nerve. This is a portion here and here contributing to our median nerve, and then our ulnar nerve is out here, so this is the M. And then the radial nerve, you can kind of see it popping out back here behind this artery. This is the radial nerve.
Can you trace the M again?
Yeah. So right here, here. It's gonna be way easier to see in lab. Do you guys see that though? Kind of. It's a weird angle because it's taken like this, but when we show it to you, we'll like stick a probe under it and you'll be able to see the M. Okay, but it's, so you see it like right here. This is the median nerve coming down, and this is the ulnar nerve. Okay. Okay, so our axillary nerve is coming from our C5, C6. It's from our posterior division and cord, right? And it's going to innervate the deltoid and the teres minor muscle. So our teres minor is one of our shoulder muscles, right? And our scapular muscles. And our deltoid is also a shoulder muscle. So axillary is gonna end pretty much right here. We can actually see the axillary nerve right here coming off of this right here. It's coming, you can follow it back all the way there. But that's the radial nerve, and this is our axillary nerve, and it's going into that region where we have deltoid and teres minor. Our radial nerve is the long continuation of our posterior cord, and it's basically traveling all the way down the arm and the forearm, okay? Our radial nerve is gonna innervate all of our posterior arm and forearm muscles, no exceptions, okay? It's going to lie in this radial groove, so here it has dove, I don't know, what's the word? Dived. No, dived's not a word.
It's
It's
dove.
dove, right?
It's dope.
I do this, I like have brain farts when I stand in front of people, it's really bad, and the lectures for Dent are recorded, so there's a lot of fun moments. So the radial nerve is gonna go back behind the bone in this image, that's another phrasing, and it's gonna travel in the radial groove of our humerus, and then basically remain posterior the entire length. Okay. Our musculocutaneous nerve is one of our off of our anterior division. Okay, so it's a continuation of our lateral cord, and our musculocutaneous nerve is innervating all of the anterior arm muscles. Yeah. So it doesn't continue to innervate anterior forearm, but there is a continuation of it that will do sensory only. So once it's innervated all three of our anterior arm muscles, it pops out and remains sensory only. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
For lab, do you want us to know are these the vertebrae that correspond to the nerves?
These are the spinal nerve levels.
The spine- so-
Yeah, so there is technically no C8 vertebrae, but there's a C8 spinal nerve. So these are spinal cord levels
Okay,
that are contributing to the nerve.
okay.
That's a good question. Spinal cord level and vertebrae level are very different.
So for lab, do you want us to know these
I
as it
would like,
corresponds
yeah,
to?
you guys should know the cord levels. Yeah. Okay. So then our other two anterior division branches, our terminal branches, are our big ones, right, in our anterior compartment. We have our median nerve and our ulnar nerve. And our median nerve is also formed from all of the cord levels contributing to the brachial plexus, like our radial nerve. Our median nerve is basically, it's not doing anything in the arm, but it's gonna stay and come down into the forearm, and it's gonna innervate almost all of our anterior forearm muscles, except for 1.5. So it doesn't innervate flexor carpi ulnaris and half of flexor digitorum profundus, yeah. So, yeah, basically, because ulnar innervates flexor carpionaris and the other half of flexor digitorum profundus, median doesn't, right? But median innervates all of the other muscles in the anterior forearm, and it also continues into the hand to do our thenar eminence, which is our thumb muscles, and the first two lumbricals. Our ulnar nerve, remember that's the one that's the straight shot, so it's coming from C8 to T1, and it's a continuation of our medial cord. It's basically, it's not doing anything in the arm, and it's only doing the 1.5 muscles that median doesn't innervate in the forearm, so flexor carpionaris and the medial half of flexor digitorum profundus. And then it's going to go into the hand, and it's going to innervate all of the other hand muscles. So the hypothenar eminence, the other lumbricals, your interosseous muscles, so your pad and dab muscles in your hand. So it's innervating all of the other muscles of the hand. So people say, like surgeons especially, if there's one nerve that you could ever keep intact for the rest of your life, it would be ulnar, because without ulnar you just can't work. Dentists and surgeons have to use their hands. Okay, so this is another image of the brachial plexus that's labeled, and you guys can use it to go through your notes, but we also have other branches off of the brachial plexus. They're non-terminal branches that we're going to talk about. So these are labeled in this image. So you can see all of these, and we'll go through them in the next couple of slides. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this image, but I will spend time talking about them as we go through the slides. So our first non-terminal branch that you're going to see is our dorsal scapular nerve, okay? And yeah, she does want you guys to know the cord level, so I would know them. Our dorsal scapular nerve is coming from our ventral ramus of C5, okay? So it's coming directly off of the root here. And it's going to innervate our rhomboids and our levator scapulae, so the muscle in our neck. So it elevates the scapula, and then the rhomboids are back here. Like that, okay? Our long thoracic nerve branches from the ventral rami of C5, 6, and 7. So it's this nerve right here coming down, and our long thoracic nerve is going to innervate our serratus anterior muscle. So this is that muscle that you can see like running along the rib cage, and it's that serrated edge. Our serratus anterior keeps our scapula held down to our posterior thoracic cage, right? So if you have damage to this nerve, like, I don't know, the books all say like a stab wound. Okay, there's other ways to damage the long thoracic, but the long thoracic nerve, if there's damage, you'll get wing scapula. So that protruding scapula in the back. Our suprascapular nerve is coming off of our upper trunk, so you can see it right here. Our suprascapular nerve is going to innervate our supraspinatus and our infraspinatus, so you'll actually see this suprascapular nerve running under this ligament, okay? And it's going to innervate this supraspinatus and our infraspinatus muscles on our scapula. Our lateral pectoral nerve comes off of our lateral cord, okay? And our lateral pectoral nerve is only going to innervate pec major, okay? So it only innervates pec major. And we can see our lateral pectoral coming off of our lateral cord, and because our pecs are right here, it's going to kind of come out and innervate that pec major muscle. And we have the pec major muscle reflected in lab, so you should be able to see both lateral and medial pectoral coming off of the medial cord. And our medial pectoral nerve innervates both pec major and pec minor. So our medial pectoral innervates more than our lateral, and our major muscle has 2 innervations because it's bigger. Does that make sense? That's kind of how I remember it, just to Our upper subscap is coming off of our posterior cord. Okay, it's like the first of the 3 branches off of our posterior cord. And our upper subscapular nerve is going to innervate our subscapularis muscle, which is on the underside of the scapula if you're looking at it from this view. So it's sitting in that fossa and innervating only the subscapularis muscle. Our thoracodorsal nerve is, it's the second of the 3 branches. And our thoracodorsal nerve is coming from C6, C7, and C8. And it is innervating our lats, so our latissimus dorsi muscle, our swimmer's muscle, okay? Thoracodorsal nerve is running with our thoracodorsal artery. It's an easy relationship to think about. And then our lower subscap is the last of the 3. So it's upper subscap and lower subscap both come off of our posterior cord, but in between those 2 branches, we have our thoracodorsal nerve coming off. And our lower subscap is innervating subscapularis and teres major. Because of the relationship, it should kind of make sense once you guys get into the lab and see. As these nerves come down and travel on subscapularis, they just loop around and you can see it innervating our teres major muscle. This is lats coming in, but teres major is behind it. So it's close relation. It makes sense for that to innervate that muscle. Okay, so this is a complete breakdown of all of the nerves that we've gone through, their cord levels, what they're innervating. If you want to use this to fact check you, go for it. The nerve to subclavius is another, these are other nerves that you guys will need to know next year, so just keep them in mind. But we have a subclavius muscle traveling under the clavicle, and that's coming off of the brachial plexus as well as our cutaneous nerves. So we have a medial cutaneous nerve of the arm and a medial cutaneous nerve of the forearm. Yeah. And I don't know if this one, so musculocutaneous, it doesn't have it on here, but musculocutaneous, you know how I mentioned it innervates anterior arm and then kind of pops out and does sensory. It's once it pops out, it is called the lateral cutaneous nerve of the forearm. So you have a medial cutaneous nerve and a lateral cutaneous nerve. Okay, so I would, at home, we can do it together, but I would go through and draw all of the non-terminal branches on your brachial plexus. So add like your dorsal scapular and your long thoracic and your upper subscap and your lower subscap, you know, like around the drawing that you have of your brachial plexus. And that's what I mean by if you include all of those branches, you'll know the entire upper limb, because that's the innervation for the entire upper limb. When we get into the hand, we have a distribution of sensory information coming from our median ulnar and radial nerves. So the back of the hand is mostly done by radial, okay? This is a weird distribution. Most of the back of the hand is done by radial. If we're standing in anatomical position, median nerve innervates more lateral hand, okay? So our thumb, our first 2, like our pointer finger and our middle finger, and then half of the ring finger are innervated by median. Okay, the other half of the ring finger and the pinky are innervated by ulnar. So I think it's like counterintuitive, because you would assume median innervates medial, but it's the opposite. Median innervates lateral. So don't get that confused. That was one of the questions I missed on my practical when I was an undergrad. So, and then radial innervates the back of the hand as well. Yeah.
Just to recap, you said that the musculocutaneous splits into the medial and the lateral? No?
Musculocutaneous comes out from innervating all of the arm muscles, and remains lateral, it's called the lateral cutaneous nerve of the forearm. But you have a medial cutaneous nerve of the forearm and your lateral
Okay,
cutaneous. Yeah.
so it pops out and then becomes lateral?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, like, for example, for the exam, like, if you get a question like, oh, a patient was doing something and damaged this, or like, what would we see if the ulnar nerve was damaged? This is the only one that goes behind the elbow. Like, if a patient damaged their elbow. what-
Yeah, so if, sometimes like if people like hang over like if they fall asleep on an armchair or something, they'll get like numbness to their ulnar nerve. So you'll see like, loss of sensation in your pinky and middle finger. You can see like weakness in your hand muscles. So that would be like how you would notice that. Especially because of the sensory deficit here in the hand, I think that would be like the key indicator that you've damaged ulnar. And then weakness in your hand, unable to, so your lumbricals are your tabletop muscles, so unable to do this with your fingers, with these two, because that's ulnar innervation. You can't move your pinky because ulnar innervates all of your pinky muscles. You can't go like this, because that's ulnar's innervation. So basically, all you can do is move your thumb in this. So you'll get like clawed hand or something. That's radial, but okay. So, this is kind of like to guide you guys through drawing the brachial plexus and testing yourself if you know the brachial plexus. So go ahead and answer these questions. Do you guys want to do this together? Okay. I'll give you a minute to think about the questions, and then we'll talk about them. Okay, so the different parts of the brachial plexus, do you guys know that?
The roots, the trunks, the divisions, cords, branches?
Yeah, so roots, trunks, divisions, cords, and branches are Randy Travis drinks cold beverages. The nerves that are arising from the brachial plexus, both terminal and non-terminal, that's a lot of nerves, so let's talk about them. So what are our terminal branches? We have 5 terminal branches. Musculocutaneous, median, ulnar, axillary, radial. Good. Can you give me those chord levels of musculocutaneous?
C5, 6, 7.
C5, C6, C7. That's musculocutaneous. What about ulnar?
C8, P1.
C8, T1. Good. What about axillary? C5, C6. And then median and radial? All of them. So C5 all the way to T1. Okay, so that includes C5, 6, 7, 8, and T1. So that's the spinal nerves that they're derived from. But we can talk about the non-terminal branches. There's just a lot of them. So, do you guys want to name them? I'm not gonna. I know them. So why don't you name them? Because I know them, but I don't know that you know them. Dorsal scapular nerve. Long thoracic. Thoracodorsal. Subscap has division, so it's upper and lower subscap, good. And then medial and lateral pectoral, suprascapular. I think that's it. Yeah, nervus subclavius, and then your medial and lateral cutaneous nerves of the forearm and arm, but you don't need to know those. Oh, was that all the questions? Oh. What each of the nerves of the brachial plexus innervates. So, dorsal scapular innervates what?
The back.
The rhomboids and levator scapulae. So I'm gonna like jump around. I don't know if we're at this level yet. We'll probably We just learned it. This is not the level that you're at, but I'm gonna like push you because I know you can do it. Dorsal scapular, rhomboids, and levator. What about radial?
Everything in the back of the
All
arm.
of the posterior arm and forearm muscles. We don't have to list them. Okay. What about thoracodorsal?
Latissimus dorsi.
Lats. Good. What about? I'm abbreviating. You're not allowed to abbreviate on the practical, but just for time. What about long thoracic?
Serous anterior.
Anterior. What about medial pectoral?
Pectoralis major.
Pec minor and pec major. Good. Medial pectoral innervates more. Okay. So you'll see you'll see medial pectoral piercing through pec minor and going to pec major. Okay. What about our upper subscap?
So
Just subscapular is
Yeah.
good. What about our median nerve?
Median is gonna be,
Yes.
Yeah.
It's all of the anterior forearm except for,
Profundus?
Profundus.
yeah,
And the
Carpial.
Ulnaris.
flexor carpi ulnaris and flexor, half of flexor digitorum profundus. So the median nerve is going to innervate all of the anterior forearm muscles and then only the lateral half of flexor digitorum profundus where it's traveling, okay? Ulnar is gonna innervate the other half of flexor digitorum profundus and carpi ulnaris, yeah.
Does flexor digitorum profundus become the lumbricals?
No. The lumbricals are coming off of the like metacarpals and they're attaching lateral to the tendon. It's like a weird.
As long as they're both
Extensor
one half,
tendon.
one half, so-
So flexor digitorum profundus is one muscle. It just has double innervation, and the tendons are what's like splitting in the hand.
Mhm.
So like the muscle belly ends here, but its tendons go through the carpal tunnel. Okay. But the lumbricals start in the actual hand. So we haven't finished median. I'm jumping. Median nerve innervates all except 1.5 of the anterior forearm and the thenar eminence
And the two lumbricals.
and the first two lumbricals. So there's this recurrent median nerve that's in the thumb that you guys will dig out next year, and it's called the $1 million nerve because if a surgeon cuts it, it's a huge lawsuit. Okay, so that's something to remember because if you lose use of your thumb, that's like what makes us, I don't know, human. Opposable thumbs. I mean, there are other things, but that's one of the big ones. So that's what differentiates us between like, I don't know, a gorilla. And we have ulnar nerve, since we were already there. Ulnar nerve innervates what?
Flexor carpi ulnaris.
Flexor carpi ulnaris,
And the other half is it.
the hypothenar eminence,
Three and
the third and fourth lumbrical,
four.
the interossea, so the dorsal and palmar interossei muscles. Do we need to know those?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, this one, the palmaris brevis, yeah. And then we missed one in the forearm.
The profundus?
The other half of flexor digitorum profundus. Good. We're not done. What are we done? Lower subscap innervates. Yeah, teres major. Yeah, you're right. Teres major and subscapular. That's good. And then lateral pectoral innervates.
Pectoralis major only.
Pectoralis major only. Good. And axillary nerve innervates.
Deltoid and teres
Deltoid
minor.
and teres minor. Good. Did we do long thoracic? Yeah, we did. Serratus. We did thoracodorsal. I think we did them all.
I think so.
Yeah.
The other question I have is for trapezius.
Trapezius.
Yeah, when we say the dorsal rami, what is that? Cause it's like, I think it's innervated dorsal rami spinal nerves, like. we
Yeah,
have to
so
locate that.
most of trapezius is innervated by your accessory nerve, your cranial nerve 11. Some contributions from your dorsal rami, so like as they're exiting and going posteriorly in your back, they'll give contributions because the trapezius muscle comes all the way down here. So like as they pass by it, it'll contribute to it and innervate it.
Would we have to identify that?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, question.
Yeah, sorry.
So the accessory nerve is not part of the brachial plexus?
No, the accessory nerve is a cranial nerve, cranial nerve 11.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so accessory nerve comes off like it's called spinal accessory nerve because it doesn't actually come off of the brain, it comes more off of the spinal cord and a little bit off of the medulla, but it's like very upper, like cervical regions, like C1 to 4, I think.
Okay, then my second question.
Another question?
Yeah.
Okay.
So like, pretty much, like all of these, besides the accessory, these are the non-terminal branches?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
So the only terminal branches are axillary, radial, musculocutaneous, median, and ulnar. Good. Any questions? Okay. So we have a blank page for you guys to draw the brachial plexus. It's the same picture that was labeled on your other slides. I'm not gonna like go through it again just because I know you guys can do that. Here's another image for you to label. Here's another image for you to label. My suggestion is to just draw it as that stick figure because labeling an image like this is, I mean, it's cool like to be able to do it, but you're not gonna draw this like intricate image. Maybe you are. I shouldn't project that on you, but probably not. Okay. Oh God. Okay. Do you guys want to take a break or should we go directly into axillary artery? We can take a 5-minute break if you want. Are you guys there?